I'd like to thank Lincoln and Hamish for scheduling me after John Allen. I feel a bit like Tiny Tim going after Winston Churchill, but we'll see what we can do here. Let's see if we can get the presentation up on the screen. This presentation, titled The Impact of Digitization on the U.S. Book Market, is going to cover several things. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of ebooks, how we got to where we are today very briefly. We're going to talk about why this matters now, what has changed to make this a reality today. We'll talk a little bit about the numbers. We'll take a look at some of the relevant numbers in the book market, in the ebook market specifically in the US. We'll go back and look briefly at the music industry and lessons we've learned, and then put all that together for what the American Booksellers Association is doing to address these challenges. I like to start this talk, however, with a little bit of a story. I think the story to really make one critical point, which we'll get to at the end of the story and set the stage. To tell this story, we like to use some visual imagery, and we have gone out and found ourselves the best illustrator independent bookstore money could buy to bring you the most beautiful, colorful, rich images to tell this story, and it's a story about a consumer. Right, I drew it. But you'll get the point. So this is a story about a consumer who has a desire to read a book in digital form. The story has an author, you can tell because he's angry and holding a cup of coffee, who has a book that he wants to convert to digital form. He gets it to the consumer and has fulfilled her desire. But what if the consumer has never heard of the author, or the author has no access to the consumer, or he tries to make his book digital and it doesn't go so well? So now the author needs a publisher to take his book and convert it to digital form in one of several formats, and we're going to talk about that as well. The publisher markets the book to the consumer. He helps her get it onto her mobile device, onto her laptop computer for sale through bookstores or digital warehouses, and the consumer gets the ebook in the format that she wants onto her mobile device, only to find out that she can't open it because she's bought the wrong format encrypted with something called digital rights management, which we'll also talk about, which plays a key role in everything today. And the consumer is sad. But the main point of this story, and I really want to underscore this, is there's a consumer with a desire to read a book in digital form. This is not a discussion about technology. Let me say that again. This is not a discussion about technology. This is a discussion about human behavior, and more importantly, shifts in human behavior when human beings are acting as consumers. Technology is only the conduit through which all that happens. So let's take a look back and see sort of how we got here. We'll go back to 1978, Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He imagined that slim folio that contained all the collected wisdom of the entire universe in one little ebook. It was basically an amalgam of Google and an ebook. And he thought he was being funny, but it turns out he was being prescient. In the US, the ebook business actually started in the 1980s. And through the 1990s, there was the Sony Bookman, and Franklin had products that required a disc or a cartridge. It wasn't until 1999 that Nuvo Media launched the Rocketbook. This is really the first Kindle. This was the first device to which you could download book content. And actually, ABA had one of the earliest contracts with Nuvo Media to sell content for the Rocketbook through our then just nascent group of websites referred to as booksense.com, now called Indie Commerce, and we'll talk about that later as well. It became clear very quickly that in 1999 and 2000, this was all hype. This was all hype. There was no reason really to think that people were going to want to read books on this thing. So ABA consciously stepped back. We never implemented a solution, and we watched and we waited. So what's changed? What's changed today that makes us think that ebooks are in fact taking root now? We're going to look at 5 different factors. 1, people are looking for information online first. Now, I presume this is as true in New Zealand as it is in the States, but it is the default for us to look online. According to Nielsen BookScan, in June, just the month, 30 days of June this year, 2010, there were 9.1 billion searches across all of the major search engines, more than half of those on Google. That's almost 2 for every person on the planet. Now, I know in the US, half of those searches are all of us Googling our own name. But the other half, where did people used to go for information? I'll ask you. Library, yellow pages, newspapers, bookstores, books. This is a sea change in human behavior. It is a sea change in human behavior. We have been trained to go online first. Second, the next generation of readers and consumers are already there. We call them digital natives. Let me ask you, I've got my smartphone. I'm never far from my MacBook Pro. I have a Blu-ray DVD player at home to which I can stream movies from Netflix on my television. Am I a digital native? Not even close. When I was a kid, I was born in 1965, so I had to get up to change one of the 7 television channels. There was no answering machines, cable television, videotape. I'm sort of the last generation of truly analog. But really, digital natives are really the 12 and 14-year-olds of today. And some statistics, this actually goes back to 2003. 99% of 12 to 14-year-olds use a computer at home or at school and access the internet. In 2006, more than 96% had unrestricted access to a mobile phone. Those statistics are from Australia. So it's very global. It's pretty much the same in the US. These kids growing up today are ready to use computers. And to show you how pervasive digital is in the US, well, you get the idea. In the States, we really do have ubiquitous high-speed internet access. It is the rare exception now to find the community or pocket in our country where there is not broadband access in the home or in the bookstore. So that has also absolutely changed this completely. Mobile access to digital content is everywhere. Lincoln and I went down to, is it Viaduct Harbor? For lunch yesterday, and as we were walking out, we went by the Britomart train station. There's a Dick Smith's electronics store there with a giant iPad, which is the same thing we have in the States. There has been iPad mania for 6 months. Prior to that, we had 3 years of Kindle mania. Mobile content is everywhere. How pervasive is it? In its first 80 days of existence, iPad sold 3 million units. The Kindle doesn't report their sales, but we know it's incredibly potent, and we believe millions of units sold. Google is releasing its own tablet. Apple is talking about a smaller iPad. And there are 45 million iPhones in the market, and that doesn't count the Android phones or the Windows-based smartphones. So mobile access to digital content and mobile computing has exploded. And okay, so just a question. What is this? It's an iPhone. But what does it mean to us? What is it really? It is an e-reader. That's one half of it. The other is this is a bookstore in my pocket. It's a bookstore in my pocket. I will confess, I'm Len Vlahos, and I do read e-books on my iPhone. I always have a print book going and an e-book going. I actually just finished Will Grayson on my iPhone, so I don't have an e-book right now. I finished it on this trip. But I'm reading print or digital depending on the circumstance or the mood, so I am one of these people who is in fact reading books on the iPhone. And there are far more who will read them on the iPad and are reading them on the Kindle or the Nook or other products in the US market. So the fourth convergent factor is that mobile content is everywhere. And the last is that in the US, our industry has adopted a standard called EPUB. And what this means is that publishers all produce their base ebook now, or are starting to produce their base ebook in the same format. I don't know enough about the history of your market if there was ever a battle here between VHS tape and beta tape. But one format had to win before videotape could really move forward and really gain a hold on the society. Same thing, with in HD DVD and Blu-ray in the US is the same thing. Blu-ray has won. HD DVD as a format has gone away. So now Blu-ray is exploding in our society as well. EPUB is a format agreed to by the Association of American Publishers and the International Digital Publishers Forum, 2 groups that support this. Now, once the publishers send this EPUB format out, Then retailers add copy encryption to it, so you don't hear about this as a format, you hear about Kindle format and Adobe format, and we'll talk about what those formats are in a minute. So the convergent factors are people searching online and trained to search online. Digital natives are ready. There is broadband access. It's becoming ubiquitous. Mobile access to digital content is everywhere, and there is an industry standard. So we believe the time is now, and we think there are some numbers to back this up. Okay. I love charts, okay? And this is a chart. I don't know why. It's like a weird confession, but I do love charts. And this is a chart showing from the first quarter of 2002 through the second quarter of 2010 ebook sales in the US at wholesale. And this chart actually only includes 13 publishers. Now, it includes all the major houses, so it's going to be a pretty sizable percentage of the market, but it doesn't include some folks like, I believe O'Reilly probably doesn't report to this, which sells a whole lot of ebooks in the US. So this is an underreported number. And you can see the trend line here. In the trailing 12 months, I think it's just shy of $300 million. And in fact, the AAP estimates that in 2009, ebooks, digital, was about 5% of the market, with a fairly reliable prediction or projection that will be 10% in 2010. So it's feeling like it's real. But keep this chart in mind as we now look at my all-time favorite chart. I actually get excited when I see this chart. This is the adoption curve chart, and let me explain what this is. On the y-axis going up is percent penetration into US households, with 0 at the bottom and 100 at the top. And the x-axis going across is time, starting in 1910, going all the way to 1999, and I have never seen this chart updated, and I would love to. If anybody's ever seen an update, please email me. I'll give my email at the end. Each of the squiggly lines is a technology. So that blue line that sort of starts and left goes all over, that is telephones. Okay. This and this, that is television and color television, respectively. And there's a predictable curve along which technology is adopted. As you go all the way to the right on this chart, there are things like the internet just starting. But there are some failures on here, too, that the people who made this chart at the time didn't really anticipate. Pagers, telephone pagers are on here. And in fact, if you look closely, it's hard to show you, that curve is starting to bend down, because just in 1999, cell phones were becoming more ubiquitous than pagers, and it was starting to bend down. Think about 8-track cassettes. If they were on here, it would be a curve, up and then down. That's not because people didn't want portable music. And pagers are not because people didn't want mobile telephony. It's because it was a bad execution. So what happens on this chart is there is a utility of use that rises to a high enough level and a cost of production that falls to a low enough level that forces a bend in the road. And it starts to curve up. And we go back to that chart.